Awesome. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and happy Friday. I'm super excited to be here for the LGBTQ Data Pride Tableau user group kickoff today. Super excited to get this tug launched, and with our amazing speakers here today, Elisa and Kevin. So please note that for safety and availability of all participants, we do have unmute and turn on video abilities unavailable at the moment, and we'll go in through some housekeeping stuff. But we will allow unmuting and turning on video during the Q&A session and other times there. So we do want to make this a community work, and bring people together. So with that being said, let's go into just some of the agenda for today. And for those of you who are just joining, if you would like to post where you're coming from, if you have not already, and joining us into the chat, that would be amazing to see where everyone is from. So in the agenda, we've got just, the welcome, housekeeping, and just general introduction. We're going to have an overview of this tug and, why it was created, what is being seen to go forward for the tug, as well as, we'll be going into the Pride Month in review with Elisa and Kevin. I'm super excited. I've had previews of their presentations, and honestly to say, it's been absolutely great. And so keeping me going. And then we will go into the Q&A session and go from there. So like I said, welcome. Super excited for this today. It's been, for me as an LGBTQ individual and who has done a lot of work across the board with the LGBTQ community, it's great to have this kind of connection and bring this group together, to talk about data, which I absolutely love, the LGBTQ plus community, as that's close to me, and what's around on the world. So with that, just some housekeeping. So question and comments, please use the chat or hold until the Q&A time at the end if you have specific questions, but please use the chat. We are monitoring that and looking at that. We want to be very clear as well as here, please abide by the Tableau Community Code of Conduct. Especially here where we say at the very top with that community code of conduct is the notation be kind. We are providing a harassment-free environment both in in-person events and in online spaces, and this is across the board. So any harassment, hateful speech, those type of things, we do not bring forth into these conversations. And I do want to make the acknowledgement of the conversations that have happened, of course, after the Data Plus Diversity event last month during Pride, with those conversations, and because of what happened in the chat and those areas, and how while that was a webinar, this is a full forward community event. We expect individuals to interact and be able to talk as we continue forward. As for these events and going forward, we will continue to allow people to talk, but for the time being, unmuting and show video until the Q&A time, raising hands and those type of things won't be permitted until we bring everyone together. We want to provide a safe space for everyone. Awesome. So just an introduction to me. For anyone who doesn't know, I've been a Tableau user since 2018. I started interacting with the data fam last year, and it's been a crazy year since I started interacting with the data fam. My name is Lawrence Durbin. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a business intelligence analyst focused on technological data for a financial services company. I am the lead also of the Denver Tableau user group. I took that up not too long ago as well. I also am a co-lead for the #DataFamCon community project. Super excited for this month's, which is around Hugo and Nebula book award winners. And we've done projects such as Star Wars for May the 4th. And super excited for what's coming up next. And, of course, I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion advocate. putting this tug together is just kind of in my blood. I started and led LGBTQ plus BRGs, building that community as well. And so, you know, this is just an extension to that work that I've done, but just with the broader community. And I'm super excited to bring that together and also focus within Tableau and data. So with that, let's talk about the tug. So why? So why was this tug started? Where is this going, or what was the need? And for me, when I reached out to start this tug, not only as an individual who had led ERGs, but with this, I had seen intermittent data pride content on Twitter, out in the overall internet, and there was a lot less LGBTQ focused content in the data fam outside of June Pride Month. And until most recently, back at the beginning of June, when this group started going together and, you know, really come for this meeting and, you know, it being released, data pride wasn't used much. I think until then, it was last used in like November of 2021, if I remember looking at Twitter. And then even before that, it'd been a while. So with this, when you see representation of individuals in the LGBTQ plus community who are like yourself, you know, it gives, you can achieve anything and be able to move forward. Along with this, for me, I go by the wider your variance, the more standard your mean, which is just a very mathematical statistical way of saying the more diverse experiences and ideas you have contributing to ideas and to content, the better solutions overall, especially when provided in a safe space. The wider your variance, the more standard your mean. For me, is from the diversity prediction theorem released by Scott Page, who is a professor over at the University of Michigan. And it was based off the wisdom of crowds. Ever since watching the video on Coursera about that, I've just been 100% in on it. And then I want to bring connection, safety, and support. We want people to be able to connect on the LGBTQ plus community, find a safe space to talk around and be themselves, and have support across the board. And for me, I know as an LGBTQ individual, I spend a lot more time in LGBTQ plus focused spaces than in mixed spaces. And sometimes the subtext and the conversations go a little awry because I understand it in the context of the LGBTQ community comparatively to what it is. So providing that space where individuals don't have to think too much or can be themselves and have those conversations. And then with that, education, not just for us across the board on Tableau and data and culture, but providing this as a space for individuals to learn more about the LGBTQ community, you know, how they can elevate additional individuals across areas of marginalization and intersectionality, and go forward from there. So with that, with the why, let's go into the mission. So at the high level, the purpose of this tug is to highlight, elevate, and bring together the LGBTQ community in data and its allies. And that means multiple different things. So in this, from a highlight, we want to provide a space for the LGBTQ plus community and data to share your expertise, your passions, your accomplishments, you know, what you do from Tableau and data and understanding, and providing that input and highlighting them. From elevation, we want to elevate and, you know, through learning, networking, other events, elevate skills, awareness, careers, and more for the LGBTQ plus community, and bring everyone together. We want, as I said, connect the LGBTQ community and data and its allies, creating a safe and positive space for us all in that. And so as we continue forward, we need your help. I need your help. We all need your help to get this tug really moving forward. And so on the left, we have a QR code, which is a survey to provide input as to what events you want to see, what times, you know, would you want this? Would you want and be interested in leading events, collaborating? all this different information. What do you want to learn? And really, so that as this tug continues forward, starts managing, creating more events and bringing the community together, what do we do? What do you want to see? We want to make this usable and great for everyone. And then on the right, we've got subscribe for updates. So scan that link and you'll be able, if you're not already, sign up for the email updates directly out of our main hub page talking about Data Pride, and get upcoming events and more. And please note, for the survey, it does not ask for any personal identifying information unless you choose an option that you want to be a speaker, you want to help out in some way, be a co-lead, or some other fashion, because we want to make sure that from an anonymity perspective, individuals can be themselves. They don't have to worry about their physical safety across localities and different legal requirements and more. So with that, I am super excited for the Pride Month in Review. We have Elisa Davis, she, her, lead BI analyst at Discover Financial Services, and Kevin Wee, he, him, his, a Database developer also at Discover. And super excited for the Pride Month topics that we have here, and everything else. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you, Elisa.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Florence. I really appreciate your efforts in getting this tug started. It's a little bit crazy to me that it didn't already exist, but since it doesn't, amazing job getting it going. I know yes, this event is not sponsored by Discover. We'll talk a little bit at the end about how Kevin and I both ended up working at Discover. This actually, I officially start that role in a few weeks, and it's one of the amazing DataFam connections. I do have slides, and I am going to grab those and share my screen. Getting this queued up over here so that if you miss the QR code, you can find it on Twitter after the presentation. And starting my timer so I don't talk your ear off forever. So yeah, the topic of my talk this morning is going to be Pride Month 2022, visiting LGBTQ plus data. Elisa Davis, she, her, and I am the co-lead of the Back to Viz Basics #B2VB community project. A little bit more about me. So I've been using Tableau since 2018. It's really easy to remember because I went to my first Tableau training when I was pregnant. And so my Tableau career is as old as my child, who just turned 4. It's a different talk, but taking a parental leave break was phenomenal for me in being able to transition into a Tableau-oriented role. I was really focused on internal work for the first 4+ years of my Tableau career. I felt like all I needed in terms of technical skills to meet my users' needs were really just, some bar charts and some crosstabs. I knew that the Tableau public community was out there, but it was kind of hard to motivate myself to get inspired to engage in it because I was really busy trying to understand my users' needs and untangle some complicated and reluctant to change university business processes. But I hit a point where I was ready to branch out into the community and start growing. And so I started publishing on Tableau Public, and saying that it's changed my life is not an overstatement. I did Chantilly Jaggernath's Millennials and Data Analyst Bootcamp is both a tool to increase my skill with Tableau, but also because you had to turn in your homework on Tableau Public. So I knew that I would have a start at a portfolio that showed what I could do to the rest of the world. By the end of that course, it was a phenomenal experience. Shortly thereafter, I was invited to become the co-leader of the Advancement Tableau user group. I had tried and failed to start a Reno Tableau user group, Reno, Nevada, because I was trying to do it by myself. but I had some work to present on with the advancement and went to a prep meeting, kind of a dry run, and they were talking about when the next meeting would be and could I make it. And I was like, yeah, I can come, guys, but why are you making sure that I'm available? And they were like, well, we need a new leader. And I was like, well, okay, sounds great. At the Tableau, let's see, as soon as Millennials and Data wrapped up, there were a bunch of new Tableau community projects launching right around then. Long-running Makeover Monday had gone quiet, and so there was a lot of opportunity for various creative community projects to pop up around the Data Fam, like Data FamCon is new, Back to Phys Basics is new, and so I jumped on that. I did all but one of the first 11 vises, and then bumped into Eric at the conference this spring and said, hey, have you thought about adding co-leaders? And he said, no, but that could be good. So here we are. I went from a super fan to officially helping Eric run the Back to Phys Basics community project. Last month, I was selected to be featured as a Tableau public featured author, which is amazing. And all of this led to my next role, which is going to be a lead BI analyst at Discover Financial Services. So really just kind of a whirlwind of amazingness has happened since I started taking steps to connect with other people in the data community, specifically the Data Fam, mostly on Twitter. And so I feel like a lot of these stories of people who are newer to the data community kind of sound like you came out of nowhere and all of a sudden here you are. So I just wanted to highlight, not a brag, but just additional background. I've got an undergraduate degree in math and a graduate degree in public administration. So I've been thinking about numbers and stories. Where did you get that data and what can you do with it? What does it all mean? Who is it for? Like, these aren't new questions to me, but the sort of the piece that Tableau Public adds is bringing it all together, combining it with creativity, putting yourself out there, being authentic and vulnerable, and just the amazing response that has come from everyone else in the community. Like, you can, my experience is you can be yourself and you'll find people who like you for that and appreciate what you have to offer. So if you're kind of hanging out on the sidelines of the Data Fam, like I was a year ago, and thinking about testing the waters, I would totally encourage you to jump in. A little more about Back to Phys Basics. If you're not familiar with the project, I hope that you take your Friday afternoon to look it up because it's amazing. Much like how yoga, you can be a beginner no matter how long you have been doing it. I think that the data viz practice lends itself to the same spirit. It was founded by Eric Balash when he took over the Tableau student guide from his predecessor. He wanted to create a resource for both people who are newer to the data community, kind of like to practice their skills. And then he created this amazing tracker. So it's really easy to go back through. If you want an example of any of the prior challenges that we've done, you have like up to 100 different examples of all of these different prompts. So it's phenomenal. The cadence is every other week, so it's pretty easy to keep up with. And the data sets and the prompts are designed to be sort of choose your own level. You can do it. And like maybe for some people, creating the chart is the challenge. It might be the first time that you've ever done this. And quite frankly, I fall into that category on some of our prompts as well. You know, if you haven't had an excuse to make something other than, you know, bar charts, line charts, crosstabs, you know, like I did a donut chart for the first time for one of our challenges. So you publish to Tableau Public. If you post about them on Twitter and mention wanting feedback, I go through and say one specific nice thing and one specific thing that you might want to look at again, tweak or change. Mostly because it's lonely to say that you could you know, that you're looking for feedback or that you're open to it, and you get crickets. So I was like, you know, I'm not an expert, but I know a few things, and I can say one specific nice thing and make one specific comment. So 1 tweet max of feedback. And so this was my first week of being a co-leader on the challenge, and Eric suggested that we do some Pride data. So Eric and I worked together to find the Viz diverging data set that we did from the Pew Research Center. We'll look at a lot of these Vizes, so I'm not going to get into too much detail. This is a snapshot from the tracker. We got 70 submissions for the Pew Research data, Visiting Diverging data. And then we did a second Pride Month challenge because it was still Pride Month, and I'll get into a little bit more about that in a minute. Make a symbol map with the HRC's Corporate Quality Index. So combined, thanks to Back to Viz Basics and the Data Fam, we created over 100 Vizes around Pride during Pride Month, which is absolutely phenomenal. And here are the week 12s. All 70 of them that had thumbnails that worked are in here. And I'm just gonna pause for a second on each slide. And then I'm gonna come back through and call out some themes that I noticed. So really amazing, incredible work. You can see that from simple to complicated, all kinds of things are going on here. So we noticed a couple of things with week 12. The main things that stood out where people made different choices to me were chart types and use of color. So there was the butterfly or spine chart, which is what we had suggested in the prompt, if you wanted an idea to get you started. Stacked bar charts, we saw a few of those. And then I'm going to call this other. There were a lot of more creative interpretations, mostly by advanced users. And then color was, there were a lot of rainbows. So I put that in the category of using color to reinforce the theme. The question there was, you know, should or should not, should homosexuality be accepted by society, or should it not? Color was used both categorically and sequentially. So I'm going to pop over here to, let's see. If you want to look through all of the Vizes yourself, I highly encourage you to check out the Viz Basics submission tracker. They're organized by week, and you can scroll through and find all sorts of inspiring work. That's where the screenshots from that slide came from. And then, so the butterfly charts. My personal favorite of that was made by Luke Abraham. He's got the vertical orientation, he's got the stacked bars. So this is actually a fairly simple chart to make. I like that he's got just a couple of numbers that are callouts. The tooltips are formatted to be a little bit interpretable if you didn't have his technical background. But he's got this sort of like very up, down, yes, no. And if you click here, the whole Viz refreshes because thank you, Tableau Public. It adjusts the yes and the no. So I think that's pretty clever. I would say that this is kind of categorical, but mostly using color to reinforce the theme. Here's a different style one, ye old newspaper. So the design here, colors used on should and should not, and there's a little bit of the sequential, the darker, the higher or lower. And I really like the comment callouts here, just a little bit of extra interpretation. This one was by Becca Bastron. And then Agata used the rainbow. I think this is just a really gorgeous one. Use of the rainbow theme. This one's black and white, so they didn't use color at all here. And again, except for calling out the different continents. So you can do a lot with black and white. I'm going to move on for time, but I will try to put together a full list. And then there's where some of the more distinct chart types, mostly by people who have been tableauing for a while. So Whitney made this one, which I like because it highlights that to make a circle, you can see that there were varying levels of no response per country. And that's going to come out again when Kevin chats about his approach to this prompt. Priyanka made this one where it shows by country where each group falls. So if you swap it to something like Brazil, you can see that the highlighted bars move. This is, if you couldn't tell off the bat, it's Severio. He has this very distinctive dark mode style. And I think that the slope charts with small multiples made it really obvious where the should nots are much higher than the shoulds. This cool one by Varun, again, has really amazing annotations in these bars that add up to the semicircle. Not best practice in terms of being able to compare the different lengths, but in sort of making it kind of comparing an aggregate. I'm looking at this dark red and I'm looking at this sort of light purple and I'm like, oh, those kind of looks half and half. Kind of looks half and half, you guys. And the same impact here. This is Dennis Cow's. I think it looks like a bunch of reference lines and it's really cool, but you can see that it's kind of a pretty even distribution. So jumping back into the presentation over here, the impact of the work. So as a queer analyst, I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community. Did looking at these vizzes give me a sense of pride? No. I mean, I was very proud of the data viz work that had been done, but the story it was telling was that, like, you know, that half and half there, like there's a lot of places around the world where it's still pretty miserable to be part of the LGBTQ plus community. When you're thinking about vizzing about marginalized communities or minority data sets, it's really important to think about who created the data. In this case, it was Pew. How did they do it? Talking to people who might or might not have been part of the community and why, to understand some of the negative impacts and where we're at with acceptance of LGBTQ plus community. What the story of this data set is that, like, a lot of places in the world, it is really not great to be out and proud. And so, you know, it makes me think about a 360 review at work, you know, like, is it a story about you or is it your story? So with that, knowing that we had 2 weeks in Pride Month, like the vizzes for week 12 were incredible, but we wanted to look at something that would kind of elevate the story of, like, the amazing parts of being part of the queer family. So I reached out to Lawrence because he had just announced that he was founding this tug, and I was like, hey, can we, let's find a more positive story to tell. Like, let's find a data set. And you guys, it was hard. It was hard to find a data set where we could, that was in decent shape, that we could grab it, that we could scrape it, that we could turn it into a fairly decent prompt. This is kind of what we came up with as we were brainstorming. You know, some lists highlighting famous gay people. Out Magazine publishes up 100 of the week, top LGBTQ firms. There was an LGBTQ community research firm that did tourism and hospitality studies, like kind of where do people who are part of this community like to go on vacation and what do they do when they get there, which I loved because it didn't also ask straight people. It was just all about gay people and what they want to do for fun. So, and what we ended up landing on, largely because it was the easiest data set to scrape and had a pretty broad applicability, was the Human Rights Commission's Corporate Equality Index. So here are some of the incredible fizzes that people made for this. I'm not sure why we had 30 submissions instead of 70. Maybe it was a harder challenge. It turns out it's really hard to make a beautiful simple map. Maybe it was that it was a second Pride challenge and people might have felt like they checked that block, who knows? But there were some incredible responses to this one as well. And I'm going to call out a few right here. I've got the links so that they'll be in the recording with the names, but I have these pulled up already. So hopping back over to my tabs. This is one of the first ones that I saw that I really loved. Again, it's Dennis Cow, best places to work for LGBTQ plus equality. So what I loved about this is that it kind of reminded me of a weather map. You could tell right off the bat where the states were that you would want to avoid. Like New Mexico kind of surprised me. And where were some that were, surprisingly good. I wouldn't have guessed that, Alabama would have had an average rating. There are 5 employers that are rated in this. So there's, probably hundreds of other businesses that you might be taking your chances at. There are 2 places in West Virginia that you could go work and be accepted if you were a member of this community. So I loved that there were some really quick insights to this. And the numbers, yeah, I just thought this one was fantastic. The next one that I saw here was Nicole Marks. I really liked that she kind of did KPIs per state. There were 2 years in the data set. The hex map was a great choice here because all of the New England states get kind of smushy together with symbol maps if you don't do that. And she really kind of took the symbol map prompt and expanded on it. So she's got a bunch of context over there, talked about how the score was baked, a little bit more about the companies, really brought in a bunch of different chart types. And I think that, again, as a more experienced Tableau user, showing how the simple map can work together with other chart types to give you a ton of information about who, what, when, where, how, and as well as trends over time. And then when I saw this one, I think Brandon is on this call. I loved this one because it talks about the perfect score companies versus companies that have been rated and are still working on it. So it's really easy to see here. There are a lot of companies, in California and in New York that period. So you could see that there are a lot of great ones, but there are also a lot of not as great ones. So, there's a little bit of extra granularity here. And again, it's sort of a spread out map of the US. So it's really easy to see, Delaware over here in the ocean instead of stuck to Maryland. And then he's contextualized it so that you can pick a state. Say you live in Texas, which has a lot of people who have, I'm sure if we went back to the Pew Research, that there would be a lot of different approaches with Texas firms, but all of these companies in Texas have 100 ratings. There are 41 companies in Texas with a perfect 100 rating. And then, so, here's your short list. If you were coming to this as a queer analyst looking for a new job, this might be a list of places that you would start with, and then, cross-reference which of these companies uses Tableau, who's hiring. So it's very, both in terms of showing you where we are on a state level and in aggregate with the HRC index, super helpful, super useful. It tells a great story. So hopping back over here. So the wrap up. This came out of our chat yesterday. The key takeaway when you're working with data, especially if it's about a marginalized community, especially if it's about a marginalized community which you don't identify as a member, it's really important to do that work. I'm really a big fan of when you have privilege, use it. But also think about what it would be like to wear those shoes. If all of the vizzes out there were about, how awkward people look wearing braces and you wore braces as a kid, it wouldn't feel great, So if you were a member of the LGBTQ plus community and you were looking at this, is this a story that's told that would make me feel good if I was looking at this? So if you're running community challenges or just picking something for your personal project, I think the story of what you're trying to tell is really important. And you can even get a sense of it looking at the data sets. What are the headlines that might write themselves out of this? Is it, Lawrence and I were joking around, like my awesome gay vacation for the tourism one, which was pretty fun. Or is it like, places to avoid if you're gay and going on vacation. It's two takes on the same theme, but with very different impacts. So have fun, be conscious of your message, and yeah. So thank you so much. And I am Elisa Davis, she, her. I tweet maybe more than I should have. At It's Elisa Davis, and I have a fledgling website where I might eventually get a blog post up that's some version of this talk, elisadavis.com. And with that, I'm going to toss things over to Kevin Wee to talk about how he made his week 12 Back to Viz Basics plot, which I did not talk about because I didn't want to spoil the fun and the surprise for you guys. So thank you so much. Kevin, over to you.
Cool. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right thing and then optimizing the video clip. Cool. Awesome. Are you seeing it?
We sure are.
Cool. Let me just turn on. Cool. So, hello everyone. My name is Kevin Wee. I am currently a BI analyst at Discover Financial Services, and I started using Tableau in 2019 for my doctoral researches at Purdue University, in which I studied the visual design of scientific animations. I used Tableau to analyze the data that I gathered, but ever since that, I've been using it on side projects and community challenges like the Makeover Monday and currently the Back to Viz Basics. So today I'd like to tell you some stories behind a Viz that I created about a month ago, entitled A Great Divide on Societal Acceptance of Homosexuality Across Various Countries. And then I'll be talking about the inspirations that I drew, the symbolism behind the design, and the challenges behind the visualization. So now let's get started. On the 8th of June in 2022, which is about a month ago, I published this Viz on Twitter. I just posted on Twitter and then with the hashtag Back to Viz Basics, like B2VB on a second post, and I just left it there. And the next day, a lot of people started to comment on it and then talk about how unique the chart type was. And then they're just surprised that Tableau could do that. And it's basically on fire. And this is the Viz. Someone could put the link of the Viz into the chat. And basically, I created a ternary plot to visualize the data that Elisa just shown earlier in her talk. And it blew my mind. And apparently it blew a lot of people's mind because to me, it was just another day, another Viz. I post something on I share something on social media to talk about the topic that mattered to me. But apparently it got a lot of discussions going on. And then Lawrence invited me to this talk because of it. So what happened behind the scene, and then what inspired me to create the chart, and what was my working process. So now let's, there's a lot of good comments coming from the chart. A lot of people thought, oh, it's amazing. And then Elisa was completely surprised by the fact that like everybody was doing diverging bars. And then why are you doing something new? And then people commented on how they liked the reference lines. But also we have heard some comments on the other side, people trying to challenge that, is this really a good way to, is it really necessary to use a new chart type that people are not familiar with to represent the data? Is the design justifiable? I don't think I'll be giving you an answer by the end of this talk, but definitely hoping by after listening to what I present, you may have reached some conclusion on your own. So this is usually what I did for a community challenge of this. I skimmed through the data set posted online, and then I would use pen and paper to brainstorm and sketch different ideas. And then I'll inspect and analyze the data set closer using Excel and Tableau, usually Tableau Prep and Tableau Desktop, and trying to identify the best approach to visualize what I want to share, design the background image on Figma, and then develop the chart, the charts themselves on Tableau Desktop, and then post it on Tableau Public, and then share it with the world on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and gather some feedback. And a lot of people thought that, oh, the path seems pretty linear. Well, no, it's actually very cursive, and it involved a lot of back and forth between the steps in the middle. And what I was trying to do is trying to summon a muse, like trying to like just get myself some excitement to see whether I can think of something great. So let's come back to this basic challenge. The topic of the week was visiting diverging values, and that is actually resulted as what Lisa was talking about. It was the data set was coming from Pew Research Center about a survey they conducted in 2020 about societal acceptance of homosexualities across 34 countries. They originally presented the data using diverging bar chart or butterfly bar chart. So I saw it, and then I went to, I downloaded the data, and then I was trying to play with it just to see how far I could get. So this was the original data set. The median of the 34 countries, we have like people that thought, how many percentage of participants thought homosexuality shouldn't be accepted or should be accepted. So when I was playing with it, I tried to pivot the table into something looking like this, more digestible for me. And I realized something. The number did not add up. I can just do that in front of you. The number didn't add up to 100%. Like, why the number didn't add up to 100%? It bothered me more than it should. And so what I did was I went back to the Pew Research article, and I read through it again, like word to word, and I realized this. Those who did not answer are not shown in the data set, meaning that there's a group of people that either avoided a question, skipped answering the questions, or straight up refused to answer that question. Growing up as a person, growing up as a teenager, we all have encountered bullies in different degrees. So to me, I took it quite personally that there's a group of people that refuse to speak up against homophobia, against a topic that mattered to the world. So I was, with this thought, I went back and then started to do some sketching on the vis. Oh, and then of course, because this is a set of survey data, I, as a person that used to do qualitative research, I'm no stranger to survey data. There's a lot of online resources talking about how to visualize survey data with binary or binary or options, where there are 3 options, a survey with 3 options. So chart chat is something that I always go back to regarding survey data visualization. Steve Wexler he has a lot of presentations about like different ways to visualizing survey data. And then of course, the most common ones were the divergent bar charts. And then I personally, in my past participations of the Makeover Monday Challenge, I had created a divergent bar chart to visualize data as well. So I was trying to draw inspirations from my own work and other people's work, and I came out with something like this. Literally a sketch on a piece of paper. So if you're looking at my screen, like just a piece of paper like this, I just sketch it on it with a pencil, and it's like, okay, I could either do a stacked bar chart like to one direction, or a divergent bar chart, but with a no answer option on the side, or I could do the no answer option in the middle of the divergent bar chart. So that's actually what I did. I went back to Tableau desktop, and then I actually created a whole chart out of it, like here. So I even like gave people the options to control what kind of chart they want, like pick your own poison. Like you can do divergent bar chart, or you can do divergent bar chart with no answer in the middle, like separated, and you can even range them based on the no answer. So everybody can pick their own story. So with this in mind, I was very excited. I was like, okay, I'm going to share with the world how cool I can make this with so many different controls. And then so I went to the internet in the middle of the Viz challenge. And then I just saw like a dance of bars and rainbows. There's a lot of diverging bar charts. There's a lot of different kind of diverging bar charts and different kind of rainbow color palette. All of these are good and valuable business resultant of someone's trying to put their heart and soul into telling a story. I appreciate it. But the questions that I have to myself is, or are, first of all, how can I add value to what's already been made? I personally knew that I could create a divergent bar chart because I did it in the past. And there's so many similar submissions on the internet already. Do they really need another divergent bar chart coming from me? Second question was how to make users pause, read, and reflect on the content. Like when they're scrolling through all of those similar chart types, is there any way for them to stop and think about the data a little bit deeper? And how to represent our community other than using the pride color scheme? Do we have other symbolism that we can use to tell a touching story? And last, but definitely the most important one to me was how to convey the idea of silence as complicity. So I went back to the drawing board. Oh, as a spoiler, I went back to the drawing board, and then I went to Excel again, and then I asked myself, okay, instead of putting the values on the same scale, how about putting them on a perpendicular axis? So I was exploring using a scatter plot. So the y-axis should not be accepted, and x-axis should be accepted, and each dot represent a country. I was looking at this, like, okay, this is interesting to me because you can see that this part is very scattered. So a lot of people actually they either selected for those countries that had a high percentage of people selected should not be accepted. There's also a lot higher number of people that chose not to answer the question at all. And here are more packed the pattern. So those who said that, oh, homosexuality should be accepted by the society, there are also less people tended to skip the question. So it's a good story. And then just when I was trying to design the template on Tableau on my Figma, what I did was I drew a triangle. So okay, there's an outline here, and then the further away a dot from the hypotenuse, the more people selected no answer, or no, they didn't select anything. So when I was designing it and something started to click, there's something triangular within the community that we could use to represent the LGBTQ plus concept. That is the pink triangle. And then there's also a plot type, a chart type called the ternary plot that I can use. So for those who are not familiar, ternary plot is a non-Cartesian coordinate system that we use to show the percentage of components within a three-part system. So for example, here is sample one. You can tell that sample one has 30% of sand, 50% of clay, and 20% of slit. So as a former chemist, I am familiar with this chart type. We use it in scientific research and experiments all the time. And it's a triangle. And pink triangle is something that that has a lot of history, meaning to the LGBTQ plus community. It used to be a badge of shame for gay people in Nazi concentration camp. You can see that here, like this is a designated color for gay people in concentration camp. They used to use it to shame us. But in the 70s, it's been reclaimed by gay rights group as a positive self-identity symbol. So we're trying to make something good out of it. And more importantly, in mid-80s, it's used in the Silence Equal Death project to showcase the institutional silence against homophobia, and then trying to raise awareness about AIDS and HIV, the disease. So this symbol means a lot to the community, but perhaps it's not something that's commonly known by people that's like not a member. So that's what I did. And so I was heading that direction, trying to create a ternary plot, but I know that even for me, a trained person, it's hard to read the exact value without the grid. What if your plot is not in a grid, like in the middle? It would be really hard for you to like find direction, right? And it's just unfamiliar for people that's not scientists or not geologists. So I went online trying to see like how people teach how to read it. And then I came across some charts talking about, oh, you can actually draw like reference lines and then use like pop out numbers to show the exact value of each dot. So that's the idea that I got. Like, let's use reference lines and tooltips to facilitate value reading. Perhaps we can use it to tell the story. So I went back to my pentagram of inspiration of design, and then trying to like come up with the the new viz. So here are what I did. I'm not going to read through it like verbatim, but just put it here so that people on the internet could use it later just to follow my thinking steps. I'm just going to go back to my Excel file and show you how I transform the data. So let's come back to here. Okay, cool. So here we know that if I were to flip this into an upside down triangle, I need to convert these three columns into the coordinates for a triangle plot, right? So what I did was I have to, well, first of all, I have to find come back here. To find these three corresponding points, I have to find, these are basically like consisting the value of one axis, but for the remaining is just 0, right? So for example, here, the coordinates would be 0.65, and then 0 for B and 0 for C. And here's like 0 for A, and then for B it's 0.15, and then for C is 0. So with that concept, I was trying to come up with the reference points for each dots. So here's what I did. For each data set, I find out the 3 data points. So here you have like this one, and this one. And then I was trying to convert the coordinates from a triangular coordinate to Cartesian coordinates because on Tableau, it's still reading the coordinates of different data points in traditional manner. Using the equation that I found on Wikipedia and then trying to like flip it 90 degrees, that's how I got the coordinates for each data point like this. So when and then with two more functions, that's one of them is called make line, another one's called make point. I was trying to map out this chart on Tableau desktop. So we're very close to the end here. And finally, with the help of Figma to design all of the other visuals surrounding it, I came to this final vis. So here you go. That's the final vis. Let's come back to the slides for a sec. So I posted it on my Tableau public. And then on it, you can clearly tell that for those countries that are often selected, oh, that's a little bit crazy. For the country that selected, tended to select homosexuality should be accepted by the society, there are less people that selected refuse to answer. And then for those, the country, like this is the 50% cutoff point. For those countries that tended to say homosexuality should not be accepted by the society, there are also a lot of people that just like straight up refuse to answer the question. So this is a very interesting pattern to me. And then when I created this vis, originally when you hover over each dot, the tooltip only show the numbers, but not the bar chart. But when I posted it on Twitter, Elisa actually challenged me to create a vis in the tooltip so that to make the visualization clearer to those who like to see things in bars. So here you go. This is the final vis. When you hover over each data point, you can see the reference line for only that data point as well as the tooltip. By the end of me submitting this vis on Twitter, actually, I started to talk to one of the awesome community member, Jared Flores. He's actually really good in Tableau prep. So I reached out to him and asked him, hey, could you help me to create a template to transform basic like 3-column data into the data set that can be used to create ternary plot with reference lines so that people in the future don't have to suffer what I've suffered through regarding data transformation. So he was really nice. Like over the weekend, he quickly put together a blog and a video to explain how to transform the data on Tableau Prep. And you can actually find these template on his blog and his YouTube channel called What the Vis. So what are the takeaways for my presentation? Well, first of all, I really hope that now you could see that there are always rooms for creativity, art, and storytelling to make an engaging database other than just precision or instant clarity. With some story behind it, it's actually could get the visualizations going a little bit longer and get the conversations that you intend to convey a little bit longer on the internet. The second thing is DataFam is an extremely resourceful, nurturing, and engaging community that has helped me grow personally and professionally, and it may help you grow as a data person as well. Last but not least, challenge yourself to be a better analyst, technicians, artist, or storyteller by participating in these community challenges, and hopefully doing so help you to apply what you have learned to contribute to the topics or issues that truly matter to you. I believe that's the core of this LGBTQ plus talk, and hopefully by using what you've learned and then presenting and contributing to the community that matter to you, to me, that's fulfilling. So last but not least, I'd like to thank Lawrence for inviting me to the talk, Elisa Davis and Eric Balash for the back to this basic challenges and the constant stimulation, and Jared for the template developments, Andy Kerbil for the instructional videos about like how to make the Vis technically, and a chart chat post for the awesome data visualization discussion. So that's it. I'm open floor to everybody. Give them back to Alice.
Awesome. Thank you both for the presentations and talking, about your stories, your design process going through this, and, talking about your experience in the community and around the LGBTQ plus community as a whole. And real quick, I will open up to allow for questions, raise hands, unmuting. But I think from my perspective, just there's so much things that you shared and your takeaways and more, but what is something, maybe it's not in your presentation or more, that really tied you? What was the importance not only of, or the, what did you see for yourself in either interacting with this tug, doing those pride challenges, even more so, and continuing on with that work? And I don't know if any of you want to start, and that's kind of an open-ended question. But like, what's the biggest takeaway overall from this whole area, or just contributing as part of this tug or more, and in your stories?
I think that the biggest takeaway for me, I'll jump in, is how quickly and easily you can make friends when you're working on things that you really care about. So like Lawrence, our first Twitter chat was me reaching out to you and being like, hey, what do you think about like trying to find some data that tells a different story? And now we've done this presentation together. I consider you a friend. So it's really just how quickly these kind of both personal / professional relationships can form when you're working on stuff that you care about and coming at it from a genuine place.
Love it, 100% agree. And I do have to say, those random conversations and, building it from that, I think when it came to, for me, I think also not just our conversation, even though all three of us were at TC, and I never met either of you this year, even though we were all there. But I have to remember, it changes a lot when you start having those conversations. I remember one instance of walking through TC and having Christina Gorga just be like, Lawrence, it's Star Trek Girl. And I'm like, I now know who you are and remember. And that was like our first interaction. And then it led into Data FamCon and more things there. And I've built that friendship as well. And just, the friendship with you, and now the talking with Kevin, and, the friendship there. So yes, 100%. Kevin?
To me, it's unique because there's always a lot of people that want to use data analytics and data visualization in telling a story that matters to them. It could be something that's about this community, or about a particular story, a personal story that they want to tell, but they may not have the courage, medium, or even a template to mirror in order to do so. And I feel like us just slowly, just use our idea and try to create something like this, and then put it out there, and then just hope that other people, when they see it, they can realize that, oh yeah, actually there's a tolerance of people with a different level of insanities in the fam community. So perhaps I could try to put something out there that tell my own story, something that matters to me, and hopefully to find friends and meaningful connections out of them. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, you're talking about like leading by example and building momentum and getting the ball rolling.
Yes, and exactly. And I think with that across the board, complementary insanities and things like that. You know, I see in the data fam, as someone who is the LGBTQ community, I focus on that. But as someone who is also neurodiverse with ADHD, there's that part of the data fam too. And it's building all of those things. And so it's great across the board, that takeaway of like finding those people and everything there. Awesome. So for the Q&A, if you have questions, if you have not put them in the chat and we didn't get to them, I think we answered the majority of the questions or provided the links in the chat. But if you want to raise your hand, we can get you to come off mute. If you have any question, if you want to ask, and then depending on that, we'll then just open it all up for people just to have the general discussion. No raised hands.
I haven't had a chance to like go through all of the comments.
And I have to say the conversations and sharing in the chat have been absolutely fantastic for everyone today. It's been great to see where everyone's from and to get everyone and the feedback and what they've been sharing. So Shara, first, I'll ask you to unmute.
I don't mind going first. And thank you. You actually said my name pretty correctly. Appreciate that. So with all the data that is out there available, I know that data can be interpreted however you want to just by looking at it. How do you feel about the same data vises being used for misinformation? I know that like a lot of these data sets, especially related to LGBTQ history and current statistics, can kind of be skewed to fit negative agendas. So just wanted to hear your opinion on that.
Do either Kevin or Elisa want to take that up first?
I had a similar conversation with someone else in another data conference called the Outlier 2.0 held at the beginning of this year, I believe. And yeah, we talk about how people actually got hurt by data misinformations and just social media bullying. And it could feel powerless against those, because creating a misinformation data set takes no time, right? You don't have to validate anything. You don't have to be responsible for what you write. It's the easiest way to put something on the internet. Meanwhile, us have to make sure that the data set is correct, make sure that calculation is correct, make sure the data, the storytelling behind it makes sense and responsible. So I don't think I have an answer for it. I certainly realize that that's a thing. But on my end, as an individual, I'm just trying to be more responsible in putting on what I put out there, and trying not to spread anything that look too flashy, anything that look too excited, too not flamboyant, too provocative. Be cognizant that there may be someone trying to manipulate your emotion by baiting you to share things that it created. How about you, Elisa?
My internet is cutting in and out, so I missed the middle part of the question, but I think that I get the sense that it's about sort of like, how do you share things that are made out of data and sort of the impact of misinformation. And I can answer that as somebody who's looking at putting out data sets for community challenges. It's really important to me to go kind of all the way back to the source, especially sort of the more sensitive the topic is, the more thoroughly I'll vet the author. So for example, for the HRC CEI data, I scraped that myself by hand out of a PDF that I downloaded off of the HRC website. So there might be some errors introduced through that process, but it wasn't, I found it on Kaggle, or, I found it on Wikipedia. When we do challenges that are about a specific industry, we look for data sources that are like, a marketing group for the wine industry, for the top end, where does wine come from in the US challenge. So I think, you know, where did your data come from? How important is it that it's right? You know, like the Netflix data, if somebody ends up watching a Netflix show that the IMDb rating was wrong, that's pretty low consequence. But, you know, if somebody ends up seeing this Viz and deciding to accept a job at a company based on what we've presented as the HRC CEI index, and that was inaccurate, then that could have a bigger impact on their life. So I think what's the story, what's the source, what's the stakes are good questions to think about when you're visiting topics like this.
Yeah, that both of you answered that huge, and I think it all also goes back to, you know, try and viz responsibly, you know, with what you said, Elisa, around looking at that, trying to make sure that you have everything in, and, you know, vetting and going forward from there. So no, 100%. So Wendy.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for organizing this. This has been awesome. I guess my question, and pardon if you spoke about this, I arrived a little bit late, but I'm a relatively young professional, like I'm fairly early on in my career. And I was just wondering if you all with your careers have any advice on how to engage with this type of, I guess, professional development, like this type of visualization or work or playing with this kind of data and trying to make impact is important, and it is very inspiring, but often not aligned with the work that we do for our day jobs. And so I'm wondering if you have any suggestions or advice on how to balance and ensure that, or, you know, like, is there a way, or can you share ways that you've been able to balance like your day jobs with doing something like this on the side that doesn't like lead to burnout or something similar?
So 100% get where you're coming from there, Wendy. As of right now, I've been in very much that, you know, post Tableau conference in May, and then with Pride Month and, you know, setting this up, along with having a day job where I've had a lot of stuff, I've kind of had the burnout as well. And I haven't been able to concentrate. I've been able to concentrate for myself on building the community, pulling this together, and yet not the actual like physical, you know, technical visualizations from a personal perspective. And it does get difficult. And I remember posting the other day about not having been able to put out as much vizzes. And Elisa reminded me, well, you're just doing the tug along with your work. So, you know, it reminds that the development across the board for us professionally is not just like, it's our work and then what the different ways that we switch our focus. And a lot of what I've seen either in this event, like what Kevin has shown, the back to this basics, you know, across the board that Elisa showed, as well as just following DataFam across the board, it provides the inspiration for me then to go into work. I think there was something that was shared last night, and it is very relevant for my day job. And so it's like trying to find that max of like what things give you that development for you across the board, as well as into your work, that then you can also take back. And I think from back to this basics to WOW to Workout Wednesdays to more, there are always little things that, you know, can really help. And I don't know, Kevin, Elisa.
Yeah, I would love to jump in here. I would say that, Wendy, as much as possible, I think it's possible to advocate for having this kind of work be part of your professional development. I've heard of several companies that have sort of a Friday afternoon is for learning approach, where you can sit down and dig into community challenges like this. And especially ones that are smaller in scope or longer in time frame, it's entirely possible to knock out a viz in one afternoon or maybe in two settings. That, you know, like, don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. I think, you know, keep putting stuff out there. I think Lawrence, you kind of alluded to this, but energy runs in spurts. You don't have to do the same kind of thing all the time. You know, I did the first 11 back to biz basics challenges. And once I started to get involved in data selection and sort of lifting up participants, I haven't been able to keep up with that. And it's just a different season of the work. So, you know, like letting things run in seasons. And I think I did spend a lot of my personal time building up my Tableau public portfolio, but I always tried to work on things in a way that was fun for myself. So whether that's finding a challenge that you really resonate with, you know, if you're into sports, there's Sports Viz, Jessica Moon, who's on this call, Viz about The Bachelor and Bachelorette a lot because she's super into it. You know, we find people who are talking about whatever your special and niche interest is. There are going to be other people in the data fam who are into that. There might be a community challenge for it. If there isn't, there's tons of space for people. Like people are starting new community challenges all the time, or you can just, you know, put work out there. So I think, you know, you don't have to do everything. You don't have to do extra stuff all the time. But when you are spending personal time on a project, try to either take an angle on it or that makes it more fun for you, or find a project that is like naturally interesting. Kevin, do you have any thoughts to add?
Yeah, you two have said most of what I was trying to say. One of the things that I'll say is that at the beginning of participating in any of these community challenges, you would be overwhelmed constantly, especially when you keep comparing yourself to what's already been out there by all of those well-established personals. So try not to compare yourself against them, but compare yourself to last week. Like, what have you done last week? Did you do it slightly better this week or slightly faster this week? That is the first thing that I like to say. The second thing is set boundary. When I was participating in Makeover Monday, the boundary was set for us. Like every Sunday, they'll post a this. Every Wednesday, they will review what's been submitted. And you can keep submitting new visits after Wednesday or like indefinitely, but they will not be reviewing any of those. So to me, I'm like, I'm just going to start working on it on Monday, submit it on Monday or Tuesday, let it go, do my work, live my life, and come back again next Sunday. So try to set boundaries for yourself, like from when to when you will be participating on any of the challenges. Don't take up too many of them. Just pick one that you like. Like just pick one that you like and then really nail it. And then you will realize that the sooner you nail down one challenge, the easier for you to get into different challenges, because now you start to see the pattern. You start to build on your own routine, you know, your own pentagram to summon your own muse. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
Awesome. And yeah, that's huge. And so real quick, I want to first off thank everyone for being here. And so for anyone who will be watching this recording, links will be available through our site, through the email links, but we want to thank everyone. We're going to stop the recording here and then, you know, keep going forward. But I want to thank first off, Kevin, Elisa, for being fantastic presenters and providing such great information, and you know, being so willing to not only partner on challenges but also come here and talk, and for the questions we've had in the chat and everyone's conversations there. So thank you, everyone. We're going to stop the recording. For anyone who is dropping, have a wonderful weekend. But with that,